Welcome to a new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future. Change the conversation, unedited, honest conversation to create the future. Today I'm with Deb, and I'm your host, Arjan Visser. And join me when I chat with Deb Brown Maher. Still struggling with your long name. On self leadership, future, and peers. Deb's a sales coach, an author, and an insights promoter. She's an artist who helps you to see the bigger picture, take ownership, and serve others with your true value. Deb, I'm really honored that you are today with me in the podcast and
Yep.
looking forward to talk about self leadership, future, peers, and
Yes,
apologies for the technology. Like it crashed a couple of times before we went live.
quite all right.
Yeah.
Technology is great when it works. Yay.
Yeah, and when it doesn't work, we know who to blame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's my honor to be here. I
Yeah.
always enjoy our conversations because they go places that I think neither one of us always anticipates. So,
That's so true.
today I come with a question about your new book, Lead the Future. As
Yeah.
someone who has made her living in the sales, goal setting is very important. And there's a lot of talk about, you have to be able to see where you're going. So have a vision, make a plan, set your objectives, and make it happen, right?
Yes.
So I think it would be helpful for me and your audience to hear you explain how your future casting differs from traditional goal setting.
Yeah. That's a good question. And actually, it is a very complex one to explain. So
Okay.
let's try to do it simple. Um, Disclaimer one. Maybe we have more today. There is a place for goal setting. So I'm not bashing it. I'm just saying that in paradox, there is something else as well. And when you do goal setting, you actually imagine the progress, the outcome of what you want to achieve based on what you know. Now,
Mhm.
based on a reference, could be your own reference, could be the default reference that everyone uses. And what you do is actually you set out what you expect to achieve. With the future, it's a little bit different, although they connect in one thing. So the connection is with the end in mind.
Okay.
So with the futurizing, the process that I described in the book on an entry level, is that based on what you imagine that your horizon will look like, you try to find out who you have become during that journey, who you arrive with, all elements of that future casting, and then you backcast to what you want to have learned in 90 days. So, not confuse that with goal setting. I use the name learning milestones. So, they are like milestones, they are to navigate your way on your map to the future.
Hmm.
And it's about learning. So, you decide up front what you want to learn so that in this case, in 90 days, you have a planned moment ahead of you where you look back and to play with words, we call that hindsight. For now, it's still ahead of us, but by then it is looking back. It's your hindsight. You gain insight. So you do not use the data that you have to measure success, like what we know with goal setting, make it smart.
Yeah.
In this way, no, it is that we do actually everything inside out. We use the moment in time. We decide what we want to learn, and by then we collect the data, and we don't judge that data because it's not matching an expectation, but actually from an emotional perspective it's anticipation. And there's many theories about how many emotions we have, basic emotions. I love to work with the work from a professor called Plutnik, who created a wheel of emotions. And in that wheel you see that expectation and anticipation are each other's opposite. And anticipation eat
Yeah, say that again. And
so in this wheel
expectation.
of 8 basic emotions, we see that expectation is the opposite of anticipation.
Okay.
And because they're basic emotions, they always connected to something else. So if they connect to another, anticipation loves to connect to things of joy, which creates hope, while expectation could easily connect to anger, and then it leads to disappointment.
Yeah.
And then with anger, I don't mean rage. No, that's another connection of anger with another group of emotions.
Yeah.
But it's the connection. It's fear, anger, those emotions that if they connect with expectation, you get that sense of I'm not progressing as much as I should. So you set yourself up for disappointment.
Right.
If you talk about the future, I'm not talking about all the other applications where goal setting is the right way forward. But I talk about we haven't been in the future. We don't know where we are going,
Mm.
but we want to prepare. So what we use with our imagination, take that horizon perspective, try to bring it to something we can learn in 90 days, which means then we can decide what action we're going to add to our daily routines, knowing, not knowledge. The knowledge comes again at the end. That's the learning behind that. But knowing that you focus emotionally on doing something that matters in 90 days, that matters in 3 years, in 5 years. So you're
Mm.
preparing for tomorrow by adding something to your daily routines. It's a long answer because it's quite a
Phew.
big perspective. Um,
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the foresight, putting foresight first,
yeah,
and then getting hindsight to gain the insight for steps to take. So, foresight basically standing in the future, looking backwards, imagining what would I need to learn to be able to be standing here now. Is that, did I say that right?
can you say it once more?
So I'm going to use my imagination to go in to see into the future. So to get foresight,
Yes.
knowing that I can't see, but imagining based on current parameters, circumstances, desires, anticipations, not expectations.
Yeah.
So, and then again, it has to be an exercise of the mind to stand in that future place and look backwards to imagine what were the steps that I needed to take in order to actually arrive in this
Yeah.
place.
Well, like you said, it's an exercise of the mind, but not as what we normally mean by the word mind. There is a holistic perspective of the mind because it's not the head, it's not our critical thinking, our analysis based on our past experience and our understanding. Now, it includes our heart. And like you said, that's where the desires come, where the emotions are connected. But it's
Mm-hmm.
also what deep inside of, let's call it below our heart. And I love to call it my spirit. And some call it their gut feeling, you
Yeah.
know, but it's not a rational part of your thinking. It's not where you have intellectual or cognitive intelligence, but it is where you sense things.
Yeah.
So we have more than the five senses,
Hmm.
you know, and I just love to use that our sixth sense, and it's for people to find out where their sixth sense comes from and how it functions. But
Hmm.
one thing I know, we all can think of someone, and then that person connects with you by phone, or you meet that person around the corner 2 blocks further
Yeah.
down the road, and you think that's a coincidence. No, that's the ability to sense what's not yet visual.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because we are so cognitive driven in our Western society, uh, we even believe that knowledge is power.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's not knowledge, it's knowing. And knowing is also like on all these levels we mentioned. And in that perspective, because we use foresight, it actually closes the door for forecasting, what we do in all the other attempts, because we are not forecasting based on experience or expectation. No, we use foresight to use all other parts of our
Hmm.
thinking holistically with what we sense, what we feel, what we know, understand, or perceive, and we use the biggest part of our brain to use our imagination to turn
Hmm.
things around. Like, and for many people, this sounds maybe brand new, but just imagine an object and put it on something, that a turntable, and just imagine that you let the object turn around in your mind. No, you can look on the other side of the object and you see that's the back end of the object and it's different than the front side.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you do with the horizon as well. We have the
Oh,
metaphors of climbing the mountain, enjoying the summit, and then you see the bigger picture of the horizon. And
yeah.
then use your imagination to see the horizon from the next mountaintop you see ahead. Well, those exercises
Hmm.
are maybe new, but they are so human, and we use them to actually try to detail what the manifestation of our future perspective would look like. And then we backcast another play. That's the opposite direction as forecasting. Now we bring it back
Hmm.
to a relational context with other people, into a actionable setting of what we can do. And we navigate that with the learning milestones.
Wow.
Yes, it is in a way, it connects to what we all have learned at school, what we all know when we are in business. But sometimes we use it in a different direction. We turn things inside out, upside down, like we do with that object in our mind when we put it on a turntable.
Yeah. One of the things I've given a lot of thought to is actually the power of our thoughts and choosing what we think. And that, as you're talking, if I choose to perceive something from a different perspective, then I have changed my future because seeing from that different point of view, I'm no longer bound to the constraints of the previous way of thinking.
That's a nugget. Yes. And that's not only for strategizing or futurizing, that's even the core of getting unstuck with problem solving.
Yeah.
You know, our brain tends to walk paths it has walked before, and sometimes that nurtures the problem definition, but closes all the doors of having a genius, brilliant thought, which we have. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it is it is so easy to self-sabotage yourself with a split second fearful thought,
Mm-hmm.
and that's so easy. I could nearly say we master that skill all, but the brilliant genius thoughts that we uniquely carry as a unique human being, we
Yeah.
tend to miss, and they communicate on a higher frequency, but they communicate with the same intensity.
Yeah.
So sometimes we just have to put our head aside and work with our hands and hearts, like you do with the painting, like what I
Mm-hmm.
do with the with creative tools in the boardroom. Um, and it's all about visualize it, that split second thought, so you don't miss it. And seeing is believing, and faith comes by hearing, and faith equals action. That's
It's
actually in a little bit, a little small set of words, the whole concept.
yeah. In my introduction, you uh, let everybody know part of what I'm pursuing is to be an insights promoter.
Yes.
It's those genius thoughts, abilities, talents that everyone has, but we can't see always, we can't see them in ourselves because they're normal to us.
Yeah.
And we don't even realize that they're extraordinary because we live with those thoughts, those abilities, those passions. And it occurred to me that if we all were aware of the insights that we carry that are unique because we are unique and started operating from that perspective, everybody would be better off. We would be better off, and everyone we interact with will will all be better off when we get the best from one another.
Yeah. Yeah. That, absolutely. It is so strange. We do that with creative tools, and I sometimes when I play with AI, I call it my body chat, and then I ask my body chat a question that I know the answer. Then I get from AI, I get an answer that I expected, but I disagree. And then I
Right.
say, I disagree because of this reason. And then I get 3 pages of output from AI, which I would normally never capture. And when I read it through every line, I think, I know, I know, I know. Oh, and then I see constructs, connections. Oh, never thought of that. And that's exactly what our brain does.
Hmm.
Some tend to say it is our ego that immediately shuts down the creative process because it just puts it aside. I know. And then the thinking stops. So when you do art, creative tools, um, and you do that with play and with flow, there is
Mm,
not that shutting down of the brain, and you just
right.
find so much
Yeah.
revelation. I really want to word that word, because you reveal it to yourself. So you find revelation that by explaining it to yourself and others, you get interpretation. And then that becomes possible to
Yeah.
write down the application. And I use that too. I introduced that in the book at the beginning as a suggestion, like, do this. Actually, I use the tool that I say, I just grab uh, a set of Lego bricks, build the answers, get into exploring metaphors to reveal to yourself things and go beyond. Yes, I know,
Right.
because you don't, I know, you know, but you don't capture it because you fall back on knowledge
Right. Yeah.
or meeting the expectation, the external reference framework.
Conforming to constraints
Yeah.
because it's comfortable.
Yeah, but doesn't give fulfillment.
No, so it's a little bit risky to do that kind of uh, future imagining. Um, but what I'm hearing you say is it helps to unlock the creativity that normally doesn't get tapped into because we are submitting ourselves to the constraints. The constraints are real, they're present. Sometimes they're obnoxious, but we're used to dealing in that realm. We're not accustomed to being encouraged to imagine,
Yeah,
to think beyond.
absolutely. What's the same with emotions? Emotions sound real, doesn't make them true. They're real. And if
Mm-hmm.
we perceive them as true, then we make the reference framework we already have leading.
Right.
I tend to call that's using language from the past that gives a repetition of the
Yeah.
past. And we are all on a journey to find a language of tomorrow. So when
Mm-hmm.
we speak it, we start to believe, act, and create it.
Yeah, because our language reflects the constructs that we work within. And
Absolutely.
so it's been a very fascinating, difficult, challenging exercise to think, um, to speak differently, to not rely on pattern phrases and assumed common definitions or assumed understanding.
Yeah.
Um,
Language
it,
is the
it,
differentiator. And it's not just being picky on words, but a synonym makes the difference in repeating
mhm,
the past or creating the future. So it is a journey of finding your voice, and which is also one step of the 7 steps of the book, is to find your voice, not just your perspective, but
mhm.
also how do I articulate my perspective, or how do I find language for who I am becoming. Surround yourself with
Yeah.
peers, because they give really good feedback, and it
Mhm.
sounds different when you speak it than when it keeps spinning in your head. And
Yeah.
the feedback gets you unstuck, explore new lines of thinking, words,
Mhm.
um,
Well,
and
it's that instantaneous multiple perspectives outside of your own,
yeah,
which, when you're willing to listen and push through, is extremely valuable because my brain didn't come up with that.
Yeah.
But someone just handed it to me on a silver platter.
Yeah. And most of the feedback you get is what you actually nearly missed yourself, but you said it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just to keep it, it's already brain thought provoking, brain cracking, this whole subject. Uh, so let's try to keep the podcast within half an hour,
All
not
right.
to have people saying they ended up with a headache. But
Okay.
Well, if you as a listener have any question, any word that resonated, triggered you, I would nearly say even if they offended you, take it as a trigger
Mm,
and reach out,
yeah.
connect, because that's we mentioned it already. The small thought that we perceive as negative, we tend to take serious, and all the genius small thoughts we tend to miss. So whatever the trigger is, take it as a trigger and reach out. The book is available on businessrevivalists.com/book. For the price it's worth for you. You can even receive it as a gift. That's fully up to you. And just also give feedback on that one, because it's also an experiment with language.
Yes.
And Deb, I want to thank you